Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. How do you all do? Thank you all for coming by. I see we've got 700 of you watching. Please remember to hit the like button. You know the drill. This helps the channel, and the things that we're discussing differ from mainstream media, so the algorithm is not exactly, the winds of the algorithm are not blowing in our favor. Let's put it that way. Please, the first order of business, tell me where you guys are tuning in from, where you're watching from, what city, what country, what state, what town are you in? I see already Sui is saying greetings from Malaysia. Greetings to you and Malaysia. That's great. I see the chat is exploding. We've got Moscow, Brazil, Maine, London, Egypt, New York City, Amsterdam, Hungary, Belgium, Ireland, and there we go. I can't read it anymore because it's too... Serbia, Algeria, God, it's scrolling too fast. South Africa, Australia, and Austria, Poland, Sealand, Virginia, Florida. Someone is watching from Venus with an alien emoji. Greetings. Unfortunately, the planet here comes with war. But let's get down to business. Let me break down what happened with these pipelines. I mean, this is really... I don't know what you want to call it, man. I think sabotage at best. You could call this sabotage at best. At worst, it's like the United States. Oops, I wasn't supposed to say that. It's like somebody is purposely trying to deindustrialize Europe. So let's get down to it, okay? This is explosive, no pun intended. Both Nordstream pipelines going from Russia to Germany have been leaking, right? And it turns out those gas leaks, according to multiple European governments and seismologists, are due to explosions, blasts, and they certainly appear to be man-made. I'm going to go through a report from Reuters now, and I'll read you the quotes, but just so you get an idea of what we're talking about, this is the map of Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2. You can see here on September 26th, there was one leak reported on Nord Stream 2 pipeline. And then the day after, on September 27th, today, 2 leaks reported on Nord Stream 1. Now you can see these connect all the way from Russia through the Baltic Sea to Germany, direct. Nord Stream 2 is not it's not running, it's not working, functioning at all, not because of any any technical issue up until now, but because of a political one, right? You guys remember 2 days before the war in Ukraine started, Germany refused or canceled the verification process for Nord Stream 2. So the pipeline was brand new, literally about to be opened, do the cutting the ribbon ceremony, and because of pressure from the United States, Germany just said, no, actually, we're not going to use this pipeline at all. Very weird. Nord Stream 1 was indeed functional, but then in August, right, so up until last month, it was functional, and then the Russians turned the tap off. Now, of course, they say it's because of at first they said it's a technical issue, but, the issue is much deeper than that. Again, I'm showing you just what's going on here, where these leaks took place. And let's look at the pictures. Look how enormous this is, because you have methane leaking up to the surface. And, obviously this is devastating for the water life, for marine life. Completely devastating. And if you just want to talk about the climate in general, the environment in general, I mean, the methane gas, it's roughly 25 to 30 times more damaging than CO2, okay? So it's just like if you had an oil leak or an oil spill. It's absolutely devastating for the wildlife, for the marine life, really so destructive. And now, of course, the question is, why did this happen, right? How did this happen? Was this done on purpose? Yeah, that's what people seem to be saying. This guy over here, you're going to love this. So his name is Sikorski. He's a Polish member of the European Parliament. He used to be the foreign minister for Poland. He said, "Thank you, United States of America." And yes, that picture is the leak, or one of them, I should say. I mean, that thing is tens, if not hundreds of meters wide in diameter. It's ridiculous. And he's thanking the United States of America. Why would you do that? Why would you just come out and tell on your boy like that? Why would you do that? He seems very pleased about it. There's another tweet that he wrote. He said, "As we say in Polish, a small thing, but so much joy." So he's very happy about this. Now, let me read to you from the report in Reuters, and then I'll dive a little bit deeper into who could be behind this, because you also have to ask yourself, who stands to profit, right? So this is from Reuters from just a few hours ago. They're saying Europe is investigating what Germany and Denmark said were attacks, which had caused major leaks into the Baltic Sea from 2 Russian pipelines at the center of an energy standoff. So the German economy minister, Robert Habeck, told business leaders that the leaks were due to targeted attacks on the infrastructure, and Berlin now knew for sure that, quote, they were not caused by natural occurrences or events or material fatigue. Material fatigue would mean, of course, that, the infrastructure is rusting, or, it's growing weak, etc. and so on. So that's not what's happening. The German economy minister is saying this is an attack. Poland's prime minister is also blaming sabotage, although they say in the Reuters article without citing evidence. Denmark's premier said the leaks were clearly caused by deliberate actions, and Swedish police have begun an investigation into potential, quote-unquote, gross sabotage. I want to play you a clip. I have a clip here from the Danish Prime Minister. Listen to what she had to say.
There are 3 leaks, even with some distance between them, and that is why it is hard to imagine that what is happening is a coincidence.
Right. It can't be a coincidence, right? Because 3 leaks on both pipelines, that's really suspicious. Very suspicious. So going back to the Reuters article, they say that, they give you background information of what I just told you, but even Russia, Moscow, is also saying that sabotage was a possibility. There's a senior Ukrainian official calling the incident a Russian attack to destabilize Europe, but also without giving proof. The Polish Prime Minister said that, quote, "We see clearly this is an act of sabotage related to the next step of escalation of the situation in Ukraine." Okay, so we have the take from the politicians, right? These are what the leaders of multiple European countries are saying, who, of course, have access to intelligence and reports from their cabinet. What are the scientists saying, right? You have to ask geologists, seismologists, what they think, because they are regularly measuring for earthquakes and other seismic activity. So seismologists in Denmark and Sweden said they had registered 2 powerful blasts on Monday in the vicinity of the leaks. Quote, "The signals do not resemble signals from earthquakes. They do resemble the signals typically recorded from blasts." At Sweden's Uppsala University, seismologists there are saying that, quote, "The blasts correspond to more than 100 kilos of dynamite. And they were in the water, not under the seabed." 100 kilos of dynamite, of, TNT. That is explosive. Again, no pun intended. Denmark's armed forces said that the largest gas leak had caused a surface disturbance of well over 1 kilometer. So that's 0.6 miles in diameter. 1 kilometer. I was saying hundreds of meters. It's 10 times that, right? So really, again, just looking at the pictures here, these are from Reuters. The size of that thing from the Nordstream 2 leak. My goodness. Again, here, just to show you where these pipelines go through. And of course, who stands to profit from this? This is the question that we should all be asking ourselves. We have videos, we have pictures, we have statements from scientists and statements from politicians. I've given you what the Russians are saying, what the Danes are saying, the Swedes, the Germans, the Poles. What can we conclude from this information? who stands to profit from this? Well, if the Russians, let's say it's the Russians, why would the Russians do this? People are saying, well, because they want to destabilize the European economy, further destabilize it. Yeah, well, that doesn't really make sense because the Russians are not pumping gas through anyway. So if they wanted to destabilize it, right, supposedly, hypothetically, they'd have already done that. Now, of course, you guys all know that when you listen to the mainstream media, apparently they have no sense of time, right? Their chronology is all messed up. Because when you remind them that actually it is Europe, it is Germany, with support of the United States that canceled Nord Stream 2, before Russia sent one soldier into Ukraine, they forget this, right? When you mention that the Europeans are trying to cut Russia's revenue by placing, price cap, the G7 specifically wants to place a price cap on Russian oil, Russian gas, they seem to forget that. And when you say that Russia was still giving Europe gas from February until August, so for half a year, without, any vindictiveness or malice, they also seem to forget that. So for me, this doesn't make sense that Russia would want to blow up its own pipeline that it just finished building. If anything, it's the United States that stands to gain from this. And again, you don't have to listen to me, just listen to what Joe Biden said. Right? This is Joe Biden. Remember, he was standing with Olaf Scholz, who's the German chancellor, in February, before the war.
Let me answer the first question first. If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do it.
I promise you we will be able to do it. That's a veiled threat if I've ever heard one. Christ. Something even more explosive. Guess what the German newspaper Der Spiegel reported literally just in the last couple of hours. Der Spiegel, quoting, unnamed sources, are saying that the CIA, the Central Intelligence Agency in the US, the CIA, warned the German government just a few weeks ago that there will be attacks in the Baltic Sea on the Nord Stream pipelines. Now, you could interpret this both ways. You could say that, well, maybe the CIA was warning Germany about Russia attacking the pipelines, right? Or someone who is on Russia's side potentially attacking the pipeline. But you could also interpret it another way and say, well, the CIA are involved in this, which is nothing out of the ordinary. This is actually, on the contrary, this is their MO. This is what they do. This is their bread and butter, right? It could be the CIA simply, doing the Germans the simple courtesy of warning them beforehand what they were about to do. Which, again, doesn't really change much, since on the one hand, there's no gas coming through Nord Stream 1 anymore, and Nord Stream 2 was shut by the Americans, right? I think that this clip I just played to you from Biden is so potent, right? Because he was not standing alone. He was standing with the German chancellor. And even the journalist that's asking him the question is kind of confused. Like, well, how are you deciding that? You're the United States of America. You're the president of the U.S. This is a German project. How come you're the one who's going to be? How come you're going to be the one to close it? And he just smiles and says, "Trust me, we'll do it." Now, we've talked a lot on this channel, so much, right, about gas delivery from Russia to Europe, how they changed the payment system into rubles, why this benefited Russia, and where Europe is going to get its gas from now. Some countries like Poland have been able to diversify and go to, resort to other pipelines. They have LNG to turn to. Other countries don't have this opportunity. So generally speaking, when you have an entire continent that has 40% of its gas coming from Russia, and there's no more gas coming from Russia, they're screwed, right? Europe is screwed. So the other options that they had were LNG. LNG is liquefied natural gas, right? And who is a big exporter of this? It's the United States. So already months ago, many months ago, before these blasts today at Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2, I was telling you and showing you that people exporting liquefied natural gas from the United States to Europe are making a killing. As a matter of fact, Business Insider used that very phrase in the headline, which I just read to you. We went through that report just 2 days ago, right? The exporters of LNG are making a killing. But it's not only that. The money, the way that this, benefits the United States of America, it's not just about exporting LNG. When you don't have gas, when you don't have natural gas, you don't have electricity. And once again, we went through how Germany nationalized its energy giant Uniper, right? Because they're going bust. The French did the same thing with Électricité de France, with EDF, because the losses are so big. And as a result, you can't keep the lights on. You can't keep the machines on. You can't keep the furnaces on. You can't keep the robots on. People that are making steel, people that are making glass, all of these extremely important industries which are heavily reliant on Russian gas are screwed because they cannot afford to keep the lights on. So who benefits from that? The United States. And once again, you don't have to take my word for it. Let's look at the Wall Street Journal. They published this just today, right? They published this, 1 week ago, September 21st, right? The point still stands. So they say here that a big winner from the energy crisis in Europe is the United States economy. Battered by skyrocketing gas prices, companies in Europe that make steel, fertilizer, and other feedstocks of economic activity are shifting operations to the United States, attracted by more stable energy prices and muscular government support. As wild swings in energy prices and persistent supply chain troubles threaten Europe with what some economists warn could be a new era of deindustrialization. This is such a powerful phrase, a new era of deindustrialization. Washington has unveiled a raft of incentives for manufacturing and green energy. The upshot is a playing field increasingly tilted in the United States' favor, according to executives, particularly for companies placing bets on projects to make chemicals, batteries, and other energy-intensive products. And so down here, they go on to give you examples. Volkswagen, the German automobile maker, or a Danish jewelry company, Pandora, they're expanding to the US, and they announced that earlier this year. Last week, Tesla, right? Elon Musk's Tesla is pausing its plans to make battery cells in Germany. They're trying to get it done in the US instead. With pent-up demand from the pandemic, many companies that have seen exploding energy prices in recent months have been passing them on to consumers. The question is, how long the higher natural gas prices will last? That is the question. And so they talk here about how it is difficult, even for the US and Canada and Qatar, to replace Russia as a supplier. But again, this does not change, whether you can get enough LNG there is very much the root of the problem. It's because they don't know if they can replace Russian gas, that they're just saying, you know what, we're not staying here because the future is too uncertain. We're going to bail and go to the US because over there it's safer. And then, of course, in the Wall Street Journal article, they talk about how the United States is, they're trying to incentivize businesses to come, of course, right? By not only investing in them, giving them tax breaks, but also, portraying it as a green initiative, right? That you're not only going to come to the US, but you're also going to make a lot of your products using renewables, right? So that's how they're trying to market it. Another way that you can incentivize companies to move from Europe to the United States is by cutting off the electricity, right? And that's exactly what the United States did, putting pressure on Germany to cut Nord Stream 2 off before it even began. And today, the United States burned those bridges with Russia permanently. Not its own bridges, Europe's bridges, right? We always say that the United States is ready to fight Russia down to the last Ukrainian. It's also down to the last European. Because the United States is going to be okay, right? The currencies that are crashing right now is the pound and the euro mainly against the dollar. That doesn't mean there isn't inflation in the US. There's very much so, but if you compare out of all the countries, out of all the players in this game, who's emerging the best from the pandemic, who's profiting the most from the war in Ukraine, it's the United States. And again, when we say profiting, I don't mean you, I don't mean the average Joe, I'm talking about companies, multinationals, politicians. They profit, and that's why they do this destructive behavior. Now, again, you can see here that they talk about many businesses. Austrian business that makes materials that are used by steel makers, right? They're spending 8 million euros, which is now $8 million because the euro is so bad they're the same, on its European plants so that certain processes run on alternative fuel such as coal and oil, right? So they're literally deindustrializing Europe just so they can mess with Russia. And this is one tiny example. I told you that schools in France are also considering burning wood to save costs in the winter. Germany, which for years has been saying no nuclear energy, is now saying yeah. They really want that energy because they were just about to close 2 plants and they don't have a choice but to reopen them because there's no gas coming from Russia. And the steel industry in Germany is on the verge of collapse. This is an absolute disaster. Absolute disaster. I mean, it is, to me, it is crystal clear that these acts of sabotage, who does these things? It's the British and the Americans, MI6, CIA, right? If you know your history, if you know their history, this should not surprise you. This should not surprise you one bit. And once again, always ask yourself, who stands to gain? Does Russia stand to gain from this? Russia already cut off the gas for Nord Stream 1. There is no gas Nord Stream 2. And these are the 2 pipelines we're talking about. What does Russia benefit exactly from this? On the contrary, this screws Russia because if you want to mend ties with Europe in the future, you can't do it. You guys need to understand that after World War II, the mantra, the mentality in Europe was that, hey guys, we need to stop killing each other and blowing each other to bits. And one of the ways we can guarantee that we're not going to do that anymore is by intertwining our industries. So if I rely on you for coal or you rely on me for steel, then we're not going to bomb each other because that would be stupid, right? So that was one of the ways to mend ties, to make amends between Russia and Germany, is to have things like pipelines. It's just one example, right? You have an economic incentive not to go to war with Russia, not to be at odds with Russia. Well, the United States has stepped in and burnt those bridges permanently. Okay, and this is very, very bad. I just want to play you some clips because now that this has happened, I mean it's crystal clear. This is Victoria Nuland, who's the Undersecretary for Political Affairs. Look at what she said. This is just a few months ago, right?
With regard to Nord Stream 2, we continue to have very strong and clear conversations with our German allies, and I want to be clear with you today. If Russia invades Ukraine, one way or another, Nord Stream 2 will not move forward.
That's pretty clear to me. Let me show you a clip that's older than that. It's from Condoleezza Rice, who is a neoconservative ghoul that served with George Bush, of course.
There's been criticism that Angela Merkel
from 2014
and others haven't been aggressive enough. What do you think of that? Do you think Germany's been as aggressive as they should be?
I'm quite an admirer of Chancellor Merkel, and I heard her statement when she was with President Obama in Washington. I thought it was a very good statement. But now we need to have tougher sanctions, and I'm afraid at some point this is going to probably have to involve oil and gas. The Russian economy is vulnerable. 80% of Russian exports are in oil, gas, and minerals. People say, well, the Europeans will run out of energy. Well, the Russians will run out of cash before the Europeans run out of energy. And I understand.
Yeah, that's not what happened, lady. The Russians are making bank because the gas prices are up. Sorry to interrupt, Mrs. Neoconservative. Continue.
And that it's uncomfortable to have an effect on business ties in this way. But this is one of the few instruments that we have. Over the long run, you simply want to change the structure of energy dependence. You want to depend more on the North American energy platform, the tremendous bounty of oil and gas that we're finding in North America. You want to have pipelines that don't go through Ukraine and Russia. For years, we've tried to get the Europeans to be interested in different pipeline routes. It's time to do that. And so some of this is simply acting, and acting as quickly as possible.
That woman invaded Iraq and helped start the war on terror. So when she says we don't want pipelines going through Ukraine and Russia to Europe, she means it. These people do not bluff, right? Now, I want to just point your attention to some other things that, again, this is just something to keep in mind. It's not proof by any means that, you know, ironclad evidence that what happened today to the Nordstream pipelines was it was the British behind it or the Americans. But still, keep this in mind. I want to show you here. This is from Sea Power magazine. They're talking about this in June, about how so that's Baltic operations in the Baltic Sea where the Nord Stream pipelines are. How the Americans over there are testing drones in the water. Okay? They call them, it's just like when you talk about drones in the air, they're called UAVs. UAV means unmanned aerial vehicle. Well, guess what? They also have a term for drones underwater. Yes, that's the thing. It's UUV, so unmanned underwater vehicle. And they talk about how the U.S. Navy 6th Fleet partnered with U.S. Navy research and warfare centers to bring the latest advancements in unmanned underwater vehicle mine hunting technology to the Baltic Sea. Now, of course, they talk about mine hunting in this case, right? But that's not the only use case for underwater drones. I want to point your attention to another article, or this is actually straight up from the Royal Navy's website, right? So this is dated August 26th, just from last month. The Royal Navy training Ukrainian divers to hunt for mines with underwater drones. Now, once again, this could very well be exactly what it says on the tin, right? Maybe it's nothing nefarious. Maybe they're telling the truth. They were literally just training people to find mines and nothing else. But I think it's worth keeping in mind, the British and American intelligence, and of course the armed forces, which they work in collaboration with, they are not exactly, they don't have a reputation for being honest, right? So you'll see announcements like this and you'll wonder, well, what's that about? What are they actually doing with those drones? Is it really mine hunting, or is this just a cover story? I don't know. But I thought that this was interesting and worth telling you about. Now, another thing that you should keep in mind, actually just today, literally today, while Nord Stream 2 and Nord Stream 1 are leaking, a new pipeline opened to Europe. So this is the Norway-Poland gas pipeline, okay? And it's called Baltic Pipe. And they were just today, I actually played you a clip from the Danish Prime Minister, Frederiksen, which I think it was taken just here at this location where they were doing the opening ceremony. Okay, so just so you can see this on the map, this is where the pipeline runs. Okay, so Poland, I did a specific video on Poland because Poland used to get half of its gas from Russia. And so it was a very interesting situation to see how they're going to transition away from that, because that's a very heavy reliance. And as we talked about, this was one of the pipelines they were going to open. They were going to reverse the Yamal pipeline, which I found very funny. And then, basically, instead of buying the gas directly from the Russians, they would just wait for it to go to Germany and then buy it in reverse. And then, of course, they have LNG, liquefied natural gas terminals. Germany doesn't have a single one, by the way, right? They take years to build. But I found this interesting, and maybe it's purely coincidence. You tell me what you think. That on the day Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 have been clearly sabotaged, according to multiple European leaders and scientists and researchers, sabotaged, attacked. On the same day, you have a new pipeline opening that is built to reduce dependency on Russian gas. Very interesting. Very interesting, in my opinion. And I don't need to tell you what kind of effect this is having on the European economy. Just yesterday, the pound also, in the gutter. I have never in my life seen $1 equaling £1 and 7 cents, was it, right? So let's look at one USD in pounds. What do we have? Christ, it's even worse. Yeah, here we go. Sorry, so it's one pound, 1 British pound sterling in United States dollars. Look at that. You get $1.07. That's the worst it's been in decades, literally decades. I think the last time it was this low was 1971. If you look at the max chart, look at that. You go back over here, 1982, you can't even see it. It's so bad. My God. My God. So the British pound is in the gutter, and the euro is also in the gutter. And of course, yesterday they announced the new chancellor, because Liz Truss did a cabinet shuffle when she came in. They announced big tax cuts for the rich, of course. That's one reason, but it's not the only one. The soaring energy prices in Europe are, they're directly related to the war in Ukraine. And yes, you can say, well, there was inflation this time last year. Yeah, but why are prices up so high? Let me go back to that article from Reuters and look at what they're saying. Look at what they're saying here about gas prices. So because of the sabotage on Nordstream 1 and 2, European gas prices rose on this news, with the benchmark October Dutch price climbing almost 10% on Tuesday. Prices are still below this year's peaks, but remain more than 200% higher than in early September 2021. So that's exactly what I'm telling you, right? Compare it to last year. 200% higher. This is disastrous. This is disastrous. I have never seen, in the history books, this will go down as one of the biggest examples of someone shooting themselves in the foot. This is Europe shooting itself in the foot to please the United States. This is what it's about. This is the United States destroying and deindustrializing Europe so that all of these companies move to the United States and buy US gas. And at the same time, they, of course, get to attack Russia through Ukraine, through NATO, right? Fighting a proxy war against Russia. And just showing you some more quotes here. Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said it is very concerning news. Indeed, we are talking about some damage of an unclear nature to the pipeline in Denmark's economic zone. And down here, a European security source said that there are some indications that this is deliberate damage. And you have to ask yourselves who would profit. Exactly. That's what I told you. Ask yourself who profits from this. Not just figuratively, but literally profits from this. And again, this is not just about gas, it's about the overall political relationship between Russia and Europe. I think this is so disastrous. They have really, almost quite literally burnt the bridges, right? The only thing that bridged Germany and Russia, gone. And when you have the CIA warning you in advance about something that's impending, wow. They have their handprints all over this. Every time you hear the phrase Russian playbook, just remember that the Russian playbook is everything the CIA and MI6 have done for the last 70 years, but just pointed at Russia, right? Just relabel it Russian. All their behavior, assassinations, sabotage, coups, plundering, stealing countries' resources, rigging their elections, meddling in their politics, all of that, just erase CIA and write, oh, it's Russian. I see we've got 2,500 of you watching. Please remember to hit the like button. It helps this video to be seen by more people. And more people need to see this, man, because the media circus around everything that's happening in Russia and Ukraine is horrific. And speaking of which, I'm going to talk about the referendums that took place in Ukraine in just a moment. Please just make sure you've hit the like button. And if you want to support my work, please consider donating on PayPal or subscribing on Patreon for as little as $1 a month. It really helps the channel to grow, and you would be supporting independent media. Thank you guys so much. So let me just talk about the referendums, okay? We have the results that have just come in, right? And I know that... Okay, give me a second. I think you should be able to see this now. Yeah. So... Oh, by the way, Claudia is telling me that you guys should check if you are still subscribed, because some of you are saying in the chat that you've been unsubscribed automatically by YouTube. How wonderful. So please just make sure that you're still subscribed, and if you're new here, welcome. We talked about these referendums in eastern Ukraine, right? So we're talking about LPR, DPR, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Now, the voting took place during the last 5 days. Today was the last day. And during these past days, some of the ballots, were literally conducted at people's doorsteps, right? They would come to your doorstep and ask you, do you want to vote to join the Russian Federation? And now today, it was open to the public so people could come and just drop their ballots in a box, like you would usually imagine, like basically a voting booth. Now, here's the Washington Post just publishing this, right? Here are the results, and these results are, of course, they come from, quote, Russia installed election officials, whatever that means. So 93% of the ballots cast in the Zaporizhia region supported annexation. 87% in the Kherson region, 98% in Luhansk, and 99% in Donetsk. Let me just show you the map so you understand what we're talking about. We're talking about here, Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson. Okay? Now, the interesting thing about all this... oh, by the way, I forgot to mention that because obviously a lot of people have been displaced by the war, if I'm not mistaken, they also had voting electronically, which you would, or shall we say voting by distance, right? So that people didn't necessarily have to come back there. But basically what the West is saying is that this is illegal. It's a violation of Ukraine's national sovereignty and its territorial integrity. And the thing is, though, you have the other side of the argument is that it's not illegal, actually, because the UN Charter specifically outlines people's right to self-determination, right? And remember, I was talking about this with my cousin yesterday here on the channel, how, Israelis get the right to self-determination, but not Palestinians, right? Funny how that works. But anyway, going back to the subject of Ukraine, that's what's at stake here, right? And I think it's important to understand something, because the population in these regions, okay, in these four provinces in Ukraine, they actually tend to vote this way, right? So if you look at the previous presidential elections, if you had someone who is more pro-Russian, shall we say, or leaning more towards Russia than towards the West, you would have people in eastern Ukraine voting for that candidate, and vice versa. In the west of Ukraine, they would vote for a pro-European or pro-West candidate. I just want to show you on this map. This is the percentage of ethnic Russians in Ukraine. It's from the 2001 Ukraine census, and you can see here in Crimea, actually down here, it's the highest, right? You have an actual majority, so a 58% majority of people who are Russian. Now, if you go here, it gets higher. For example, in Donetsk and Luhansk, you'll see 39%, 38%. And then here it's 24%. As we go down to Zaporizhia and Kherson, it gets lower. But still, you get the idea, right? So, the argument that's being made is that, well, for several years, the Ukrainian government has been neglecting the residents, the population of these regions, because they are Russian and they don't like them. And these people basically want to break away from Ukraine and join Russia because they feel more protected, and so on. Now, I'm going to be very clear. I did a full video on this. You can see here the title of it. It's called, Why Are People in Ukraine Voting to Join Russia? Right? I published it just yesterday. So if you want a full segment on this topic, please go and watch that, because we already went into detail about all of this. But for me, the biggest sticking point is that when it comes to illegal annexations and international law. How come international law never counts and never matters when Israel is annexing Syria, for example, right? Or annexing Jerusalem, which is, the UN said clearly Jerusalem is supposed to be independent. It doesn't belong to anyone because it's such it's of utmost importance for Muslims, Jews, and Christians, right, as a holy city. So it's going to be a separate body. That was the idea. And the Israelis just ignored that, and they illegally annexed it. And the UN, even the US at the time, like everybody on the Security Council, came out and said, this is bad, it's illegal. But what changed? Donald Trump comes in, and he reverses that, and he says, you know what? Jerusalem is Israeli, and we are even moving our embassy there. You know what? The Golan Heights are not Syrian anymore. They're Israeli. And the United States starts redrawing maps, literally redrawing maps, official maps, to show the occupied Syrian Golan Heights as Israeli. And so Joe Biden's administration comes in afterwards. And who's the new Secretary of State? It's not Mike Pompeo. It's Tony Blinken. And Tony Blinken goes to the United Nations General Assembly this week. He sits there and starts lecturing Russia about, redrawing maps. And he himself, Mr. Blinken, was saying that the Biden administration is not going to change what Donald Trump did. That he and Mr. Biden are going to continue recognizing the Syrian Golan Heights as Israeli. So when it suits him, when it suits Mr. Blinken, when it suits Mr. Biden, they're fine with redrawing maps when it's good for Israel or it's good for the US. They have no problem seizing territory by force. Remember, Joe Biden was a huge proponent of invading Iraq. They don't have any problem with that. But all of a sudden, when Russia's doing it, now they care, right? And even then, I don't think it's fair to compare those whatsoever, right? Because you cannot make a claim that there are Israelis living in the Golan Heights and that's why Israel wanted to annex it. No, they're Syrians. As a matter of fact, Israel is doubling the number of illegal settlements, illegal settlements in the Golan Heights on purpose so they can legitimize and try to justify annexing it illegally. But there were no Israelis there. This is Syria, right? So you can't even make that argument. You can't even compare that to what is happening in Ukraine, where there are actual Russians living in eastern Ukraine. And I think there was a very important quote. I don't know if this was Putin. I think many people have said this during the last 30 years, that when the Soviet Union ended, from one day to the next, you have literally tens of millions of Russians who suddenly found themselves in a new country. Right? So that's also something to take into consideration. But I just want to show you that the most important point to remember here is the hypocrisy. They are such hypocrites. The West are the ultimate hypocrites. They had no problem redrawing Serbia's borders, right? They had no problem with the Kosovo referendum. They had no problem invading Iraq, invading Libya, invading Syria. Right now, as I'm speaking to you, the United States is occupying 1/3 of Syria, stealing oil in plain sight. Hypocrisy of the highest order. That is all I have to say. Thank you guys very much for tuning in. And again, please hit the like button. Remember, tomorrow, so in about 12 hours, I'm going to be live with Julian Assange's wife, Stella Assange. She's going to come on the show. We're going to talk about a lot of things, some very important events that are happening in the US and the UK in October that you want to be at. And of course, we're going to talk about the court case. So it's tomorrow at noon Paris time. Or Berlin time. If you're in New York, that would be 6 a.m. So wake up early. And if you're in the UK, that's 11 a.m. Okay, so I'll be with Stella Assange live tomorrow. And again, if you're new here, please consider subscribing. It really helps to grow the channel. This is the place for independent media, international affairs, everything to do with the Iran nuclear deal, everything to do with Iran in general, Palestine, Syria, the United States, the UK. This is the spot. You know where to find me. And thank you all for tuning in. Thank you for subscribing. And if you can afford it, please consider donating $1 a month or $2 a month on Patreon. I'll put the link up here. And I really, really appreciate all you guys tuning in and coming. It's really great to see you. And I'm actually curious, can you tell me in the comments, because many of you joined after I started, where are you tuning in from? Where are you watching? Tell me what city, what state you're tuning in from, and where you got the notification, because everything seems to have worked great. I'm actually curious whether YouTube notified you, or are you subscribed on Telegram, on the email newsletter. I want to see what's working and try to push that more. You people... Okay. There are too many people spamming the chat right now. I love it. I love it. No, it's exploding. Look at all the countries. Austria, Netherlands, Paris, Moscow, Estonia, Tanzania, Texas, California, Los Angeles, Russia, India, New York, Sydney, Brooklyn, Russia, Sweden, Bangladesh, Canada, Sweden, Lebanon. Wow. Puerto Rico, Germany. Beautiful, beautiful. I love all of you. Shout out to you guys, and shout out to your beautiful towns, countries, cities, and states. And I'm so grateful to have you. It's a true honor to have an international audience, especially when I'm focused and specialized on international relations. That makes me very happy and very proud. Thank you so much. So I'll see you guys tomorrow, noon Paris time, 11 a.m. London time, 6 a.m. New York time, with Stella Assange. Thank you so much for tuning in. Take care. Ma salame. Bye-bye. In the last couple of months, you've seen them sanction Russia, and what has that done? It's driven the value of the ruble up. The euro and the dollar are down. Russia has made even more money than it was making before, because the Europeans are still buying the oil. The rest of the world is still buying the oil, and the price of oil and the price of gas have gone up. So even if Russia's selling less oil and less gas, the fact that the price has gone up means that Russia's making more, there's more revenue, okay? So they've come up with a new plan. This is their new brilliant plan. The crude cap applying from December 5th, and the refined products to follow from February 5th, 2023. If you want to go and move Russian oil, you need to get a ship, and you need to get that ship and the cargo insured. The idea is that they will refuse to move your Russian oil unless you bought it at a price per barrel that is below this threshold. I can already tell you one thing: the Chinese are never going to go along with this price cap. A price cap on Russian oil without the price of oil skyrocketing. It's just not happening, man. The EU now wants to replace Russian gas with Israeli gas, right? There's nothing better than some stolen Lebanese gas. And the Israelis are trying their best to block the nuclear deal because, you know, if sanctions are lifted on Iran, Iran is free to sell its oil and gas. Remember, Iran has the biggest gas reserves in the world after Russia. And what do the Israelis do? They straight up just send a giant ship to start extracting the gas. I mean, this thing is a behemoth. You know, Nasrallah, who is the Secretary General of Hezbollah, he threatened them that if they extract any gas before they solve the maritime border dispute, there's going to be a huge response. If Israel messes with Lebanon and starts extracting gas before this issue has been resolved, they're going to strike the Israeli gas rigs. And no company is going to want to come anywhere near that because it's a war zone then. Let me show you this opinion piece I found in The Guardian. The ruble is soaring and Putin is stronger than ever. Our sanctions have backfired. Wow, you don't say. Took you 5 months to realize that? Western sanctions against Russia are the most ill-conceived and counterproductive policy in recent international history. The reality of sanctions on Russia is that they invite retaliation. Putin is free to freeze Europe this winter. He has slashed supply from major pipelines such as Nordstream 1 by up to 80%. The chief beneficiary is none other than Russia, whose energy exports to Asia have soared, driving its balance of payments into unprecedented surplus. Man, seriously, did I not say exactly all of this months ago? Perhaps after all, we should stick to war. I don't agree with everything in this article, but the premise that sanctions have failed, absolutely. I mean, this was clear from the beginning, man. They're attacking India again for buying Russian oil. Now, again, think of how the United States and the West are. They thought, okay, we're going to sanction Russia, and then Russia's economy is going to be destroyed. And now Russia is moving more amounts of oil towards the east than it did before, and India is buying this up at a discount. The Ukrainian foreign minister, look what he says to India. He says that every barrel of Russian oil delivered to India has quote-unquote Ukrainian blood on it. They're shipping Russian oil to the United States via India. They just send it to India, and then in India they mix it in with something else, right? So chemically speaking, it's not exactly 100% the same as it came in from Russia. Western European countries and the United States want to go lecture India for buying the same oil as them. The West still consuming Russian oil, and then they have the nerve to lecture India for doing the same. Europe needs a gas supplier. Israel, I mean, no matter what it wants to do, it's not just about the money. Let me explain this, man, because the Israelis, for them, it's not that they need the money desperately like Lebanon. They want people to legitimize them, to validate them. They want to have the prestige of being, oh, we're an official energy supplier to the European Union. Remember, when you are supplying resources that are so crucial, like oil, like gas, you know, this gives you power. It is power. And they want to kneecap Iran in every way, whether it's gas, whether it's oil, whatever it is, whether it's foreign investments. Remember how many companies lost billions that they invested in Iran? There is a serious will to cooperate with Iran, but the Israelis hate that. They want to be the number one in the region. Gennady Gatilov, who is Russia's permanent representative to the United Nations in Geneva, that just means that he's an ambassador. He said that the world has changed and the UN will never be the same as it was before. These UN votes, remember, there were multiple resolutions to condemn Russia, to ask Russia to end the invasion and so on. India that didn't do it, China that didn't do it, and only South Africa condemning Russia. That's very huge. They want to deal with Russia. Doesn't mean they like the war, but they're not going to go and like cancel Russia. Although overwhelmingly those countries at the UN did vote to condemn Russia, the ones that didn't have very powerful economies or vast resources, or both. Of course, that includes Iran as well, Iraq. They all refuse to condemn Russia. I think I understand what he's saying, that, oh, the UN will never be the same. I get the feeling it's the same with the European Western society, the economy. This is all going to go down the drain. A lot of people are going to get hurt, which is very unfortunate.